Welcome, everyone. My name's Neil Howman from Live, and you join us again in the Marketing Kitchen. I can't believe this is our fifth session already. But before I introduce our special guest for this week's session, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Ashley, who's going to tell you all about this wonderful live platform. Ashley.
All right. Hi, guys. So welcome to the Marketing Kitchen. You can think of this as any other sort of live event where all of these different Zoom rooms are different rooms you can go into and have different conversations about the topic at hand today. You can scroll down and see who's in which room on the left-hand side of your screen here. If you want to jump into a different room, you just have to click on it and you will get this little message that asks if you want to open a Zoom room or if you want to stay where you are. For me, I'll just click cancel. And to get back to that main map view, I'll go to the left-hand side of my screen here and click map view. We also, if you scroll down, have a Marketing Kitchen archive. You can use this link to access all the previous recordings of all the past Marketing Kitchens. All right.
Thank you, Ashley. And I would really recommend that archive there. It's a great repository of all the previous Marketing Kitchen sessions we've done, and there's a mine of information in there. Anyway, to today's session, we are going to be talking about trade show booths, do's and don'ts. And even though it's 3 in the afternoon here, that's quite difficult to say. But anyway, we have an undoubted master of trade show booths, do's and don'ts, in the form of Susan Warren, Chief Business Development Officer at the Dundee Hills Group. Hi, Susan. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
And what do you think? What do you think of the view?
That's my kind of kitchen.
Well, I know Susan likes the sea. She likes sunshine. I'm not sure how much she likes the kitchen, but it's mainly all view there. And I put a boat out there for you as well. So
I'd cook if I was in that kitchen. We'll put it that way.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And thanks so much for joining us. Just a brief overview of how this is going to go. Susan and I will talk for 15 or 20 minutes. And Susan has provided some fantastic top tips on this subject. And we've got quite a bit to get through. But while we're talking, I would like to ask everybody in our audience to think about their own experiences visiting or working on trade show booths. Good things, bad things, what worked for you, what didn't work. Put them in the chat, and if I can keep across those as well as keeping up with all of Susan's fantastic points that she's sent in, then we'll feed them into the conversation. But anyway, let's get started. Susan, I suppose the best place to start is preparation. But before we get into that bit, I think I'm hoping I'm not being impolite here to say that you have visited 1 or 2 trade shows and 1 or 2 trade show booths in your career. Would that be?
Sadly, that's very accurate. Yes.
Yeah, and more so, you have kind of witnessed the booth experience, shall we put it, on both sides of the equation, because I think you started essentially by working on, trade show booths for a vendor. Would that be right?
Spent 16 years with a manufacturer, so on a trade show floor for numerous shows during the year. So that dates all the way back into early 90s. But yeah, so I've had that, not so unique, I guess, experience, just a good experience of working the trade show from both the exhibitor perspective, and now been doing it for 17 years, walking numerous trade shows for various industries. So yeah, definitely have a lot of experience, seen a lot of things.
I'm doing some maths here, but I'm not going to
do the math.
Tell you what the answer is I've got. So I mean, I think you're pretty well qualified to give us the benefit of your what should we say, experience. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, preparation. So the first thing that you wanted to mention was the area of signage. Now, obviously, we've got a lot of trade shows coming up, and many people will have already had their, their booths are shipped and designed, but there is sort of last minute signage that they can attend to and think about. What sort of advice would you give when thinking about signage on booths?
Yeah, so I think, like you said, I think the main signage, the overhead, the main booth signage is typically done when you're building your booth. You've got these things already designed. So it's much more about the on-site signage that's done.
Right.
And to think about, first, you want to make sure that your brand is seen at eye level in various places of the booth, because quite often you see this massive overhead sign, and then when you're in the booth, there's almost nothing that says where you are, what company it is.
Yeah.
And where that comes into play when it's important is if you're doing a video demo or a video interview, you have no backdrop. So it's just something to think about there. But then also, a lot of times people are putting up the kind of peel and stick signage,
Sure.
the letters, and those are those last minute things that are done at show. And you would be surprised how many people do not spell check those. This literally just happened at a trade show, a different trade show. And we were walking through the booth a day before setup, setup day. And we were letting them know, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. And they're going back, peeling things, because it's not always the exhibitor themselves that are putting up the wording. They're told, put this up, and then other people do it, and they might not even be thinking about it. So
yeah, my thoughts instantly go back to one of those examples, and it was actually a typo, and then they had to take some action to do it, and unfortunately the end result wasn't great, but they had to solve that problem. The other thing about positioning of signage that you reminded me of is that I once had a client on their booth who was insistent on standing somewhere in a position, and sure, they had their sign behind them. I tried to point out to them, and it was only when they came around and looked through the viewfinder, that their arch rival, their main competitor, had their signage in the next booth looming even larger than theirs. So maybe positioning is something as well. I think
good point.
Anybody watching this, if you can think of some signage disasters that you've seen, put them in the chat. Let's share. We're all friends here. Let's share. Right. Okay. So anyway, on to the booth itself and the preparation, really. You've put a lot of emphasis, and I absolutely understand now why, with all of your experience of being on the booth, about the information desk. Strikes me that you walk onto a booth at a trade show, and every single member of the company or representing that company is an ambassador for the company. I know it sounds simple, and that really starts at the information desk itself, doesn't it, Susan? I would think.
Well, I think the key word there is information.
Yes.
This is more of like my pet peeve list with this kind of thing, because there's so many times that particular location in a booth is the one that has the least amount of preparation thought behind it. It's just like, let's throw somebody in there that might not know anything about our company. You just need a body there, and to me, that's not the case. And this comes from my years of working on a booth. And I actually did work the information booth, and there's a lot of there's a lot that can be said for putting women in an information booth. That's another topic for another day. We don't have to talk about old booth babe words here, but I think I was in the booth in the information desk, so to speak, because I had the information. At the time when I worked for the manufacturer, I was sales operations and domestic distribution. So I knew who all the salespeople were. I knew the regions they served. I knew all of the dealers. I knew everybody, and I knew the product line. So when someone came to the booth and asked for information, I made sure I knew where,
You
I
actually,
knew who to get for them. I was able to give them that information, and that's what you want. Somebody that
it's so important.
representing
Yeah.
your company in an effective way. And I
Yeah.
know that there's times that exhibitors need that extra set of resources, the extra people in the booth to do those types of jobs. And so now you've got, and back then they didn't have this to this degree now, but there are agencies, reputable agencies that you can hire specific booth staff, so hostesses, demonstration people,
Cool.
all of that from, these are people that are trained to get to know everyone in the booth really, really quickly. They know the names, they understand what's going on. They are not just simply a body there scanning
Yeah.
badges. So I think that's really important. And that ties into where, again, whoever's there should know who the spokespeople are in your booth, who the sales reps are, and basic product line. If there's a dealer list available and that can be staffed, that's really helpful, because you want it to be as easy as possible for a visitor to get information or a follow-up when they come to your booth. So if there's a stop point at the main desk that they arrive at, how likely are they going to continue further with you? And
Absolutely. Mhm.
yeah, and I would say also further to that point, if they're going to know who everybody is, I will just say this from my marketing PR hat on. If you have a PR agency, at least let the information booth, if not everyone else on your booth staff, know who the agency is, because they're there to help you when they are at your booth. And so often, agencies will walk up to their own clients' booths, and these are people that might not necessarily interact with them, engage with them on a regular basis, but they don't even know they have an agency. So if an editor walks up, they might not know, here's your agency.
Exactly.
So
I have a question, Susan, just following on from that. If I came onto a booth when you were, working a booth, managing the booth, and you knew a particular spokesperson for either a particular product line or a particular region was busy at that time, I mean, it's always seemed to me counterproductive to just try and sort of bluff your way to deal with that person. You should surely have some sort of process in place where you're taking details, you're arranging a later time when you know that person will be available, or for them to get back to the visitor. Would you? I mean, that's surely a better policy than just trying to bluff stuff.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if they're specifically looking to speak with their own salesperson, let's say, because they know them, they've worked with them,
Cool.
then yeah, you need to make an appointment to come back if that person's busy, or, obviously you want to help them in every way you can to connect with that person. If they simply want a demo, there's other people. This is why you need to know who all the spokespeople who can speak about that product. And that's where it comes into play, that if you actually have someone who's within your company, who knows your product line, they can speak to it, usually to go through the basics of the product. And for the in-depth demo, then they can usually, by that time, if I'm there, I would be speaking about the product to the degree that I can until they're ready for a demo. And then you can arrange that. But yes, you want to be as helpful as possible to get the information and make sure that they come back, or they will stay and speak to someone else. I mean, typically, unless they're there just to meet someone that they already know, they probably want more information in a demo. And I think the whole idea of having booth staff is that they should know what that is and be able to help.
Well-informed booth staff, good scheduling as well, I would think, knowing who is likely to be where and when people are going to be off.
Yeah. Absolutely. If you don't have a booth schedule and someone in charge to know where people are, and if somebody's walking off the stand, it should be in place that they let this person know, I'm off the stand for 10 minutes. Have cell phone numbers, so if it's urgent, I mean, I would know, being in sales, I would know if my key customer came in the booth and I was, off taking a break for lunch, text me because I'm dropping lunch and coming back.
Absolutely.
So, you want to have all of that information available to the person that is managing that schedule.
So plenty of preparation, organization, clear communication amongst everyone. What are your thoughts, actually? Now, this is me wearing my sustainability hat. As you can tell, looks a little bit like a lampshade, I think you'll agree. On sort of giveaways and swag and
Swag. The old
stuff like
swag.
that. Because we used to just come back when my daughter was young. It's like how many sort of squeezy stress things and balls and
Oh
yo-yo.
yeah, the lighted balls that when you bounce them, they
Yeah,
light. I
yeah.
mean, that was always the last day of every trade show. That was the booth swag swap day. So you
Right.
take your bag of all the stuff you had left over, you go swap it for the other good stuff.
Yeah.
Those days, I mean, unless you are B2C, I mean, that still comes into play. You'd be surprised. A lot of the consumer side really wants that swag, the
Yes.
cheap, junky stuff. Now it's more and more companies are conscious of their sustainability, their footprint there. They don't want 1,000 plastic pens on their stand. So I just actually saw an article about this. It was an article, it was on LinkedIn the other day. Some may have seen it, but they're talking about that, where it's more about not so much the quantity of what you're going to give away, but the quality, and have it be purposeful, like a notepad that is made from sustainable products. You'd be surprised at how many people actually enjoy that over getting, even the hand sanitizer these days. It's like everybody has their own. You don't need to be supplying all these things anymore. And I think people will actually respect the company for thinking of this. And also it's good to have a tiered level of swag. So again, if you've got some really key customers coming into your booth, you want to give them a gift. This isn't swag anymore. This is a gift. This is a well thought out, useful gift for your key customers. Then you might have another tier where these are for your top dealers. These could be for, just long-term customers. Maybe they're not the biggest key customer you're looking to close, but these are, your good clients here. So that might be a second level. And then you might have the third tier, which is, something a little less expensive, but again, considering purpose-driven, sustainable.
What about press gifts? We have a question. What about gifts for the press? That has changed somewhat.
That has changed. And I think there's, most of the time when I see the press asked if they want something, like most of the time it's the cheap swag. So of course they don't want to drag themselves down with all that stuff. If you give them an expensive gift, quite often they're not even allowed to take that gift. Sometimes they can. So I think it's not a bad idea to consider the press as among this top tier level or second tier level, but you should ask, would it be appropriate? I'd love to give you this gift. But again, a lot of times they will decline that respectfully because, they really can't accept.
Well, I would, so I think with swag, you need to give it much more considered thought. Just on the subject of the press and indeed sustainability, I'm sort of tempted to mention that you can find an awful lot of news in that department, the Flint.media. Anyway, moving swiftly on.
Shameless plug.
Did you see that? I just worked that little...
I like how you worked that right in there.
Add sting in there. That was quite nice. Nora, let's talk about engagement now. So that's good preparation of your booth. Think about how you are going to organize your booth, but you then obviously get visitors, and these are an important, very important component. And as I said, you've seen it from both sides, Susan. So I think we probably all have experiences of being a visitor on a booth, and our experiences have been both good and bad, I would suggest. But maybe a couple of points to think about as we come into some of the big trade shows ahead of us.
I think this, a lot of the topics we're talking about, including the engagement side, it's
Yeah.
kind of glossed over quickly by an exhibitor. And I'm not looking to insult exhibitors with that. It's just that they're so busy trying to get their booth built, worry about the product being on the booth and their messaging and all, they just assume everyone should know what they're doing.
Right.
You would be shocked. You're not shocked because you're at all these trade shows too,
I've been
as
to a few.
many of us are. But it is surprising, I guess, is a better word to me, that you still see these same things and that you have to actually say something about engagement.
Yeah.
The first one for me is really the ability to listen, especially if you're on the booth as really in any capacity.
Sure.
Someone walks into your booth. First of all, you don't want to pounce on them. Like you see the booth where there's like 5 people standing around and you're the first potential customer walking in. Everybody pounces on you. It's like you're in the shoe store. It's like,
Yeah, it really
just
is.
how about a greeting? How about, hey, how are you today? And some exhibitors do this really, really well. Make the person feel welcoming, make them feel, like that you're offering them a welcoming introduction to your company. Make them listen, engage with them and listen to what they're looking for. Why are they there? Maybe they're just interested in like, oh, what is this new technology? They might not even be there to buy from you, but they're interested in what you're doing. So you owe them that time to be able to explain that to them. Maybe you don't spend an enormous amount of time because they're not a customer or potential customer, but you give everyone that time of day, you listen to what their needs are, and then you customize what you say and what you do in the booth to that person's needs. So if they are looking for a demo, they've got 2 minutes of time. You concentrate that demo on what they're looking for. Don't just do your same old demo reel over and over and over again with every single person. Ask them, do you want the full demo? Do you just need the highlight points? What points can I be talking about with that? Body language. I mean, I think we all know that.
Really important. Oh, you've just reminded me. I walked onto a booth once and there were 5 of them, 5 people. I'm mentioning no names here. 5 people, all on their phones, all kind of sitting inward like they were in a little circle, a campfire, but facing inwards. And it's like, now am I going to get the answers to my questions here? Do I want to walk on this? I mean, it just reminded me instantly, body language is everything, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean.
Or you've got examples too.
Well, and it's not just the body language itself. It's all of that dynamic of, first of all, it's like you don't want to ignore anyone.
Sure.
You want to give everyone the time and attention that they deserve because they're stepping into your booth for whatever reason.
Absolutely.
I've had experiences where I have walked up to a booth to just try to understand what this technology is. And I've had the person say to me, well, what do you do? And, unfortunately, when you're not in a buying position, I'm there potentially to get new clients for, our agencies here for, marketing and PR and content creation. I understand a lot of them are not going to have time for me, but I've been in this industry my entire career, or, these industries that I serve, which are numerous. And I'm there to also understand the technology, what new things are coming out. I'm talking to editors all the time. So how do they not know what I'm going to walk out with, right? So I've gone up to a booth to just understand what is this new technology they're showing. It was interesting to me. I get asked, what do you do? Literally just like that. So what do you do? And I explain what I do. Somebody else walked by. Literally, they turned to the other person, ignored me, never even said goodbye. And I just walked away saying, you've got to be kidding me. Like, did that just happen?
Absolutely.
I've had people ask me, what are you doing here? It's really not an opening question when somebody goes by your booth. What are you doing here?
I think it comes back to that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, they missed the they are ambassadors for the company. So if you have that sort of response, then there's something in the company culture that must be making that sound okay,
Well,
unless it's being
yeah,
addressed.
and you know, the important thing is, as much as they may think this person is not important to me because I can't sell to them, what they
Right.
don't understand all the time is if you don't want to write anyone off, because networking is really just as important as selling in the industries, you know, that the technology industries, especially. People move around a lot. The technologies are changing all the time. And there's new associations and membership groups. There's people introducing you to who these are. There are people that are, you know, just looking to network and just say hello. And I think a good example of that is when I was at the manufacturer and exhibitor, I met, you know, Chris and Karen here from Dundee Hills Group, and they didn't try to sell me anything. Yes, they were trying to work with my company, but they treated me like nicely, like a friend. I met them every year. I got to know them, and eventually it landed me a job later in my career because I had this relationship with them.
Well, you kind of jumped in on my next question. I wondered how that worked out for you, but you've already answered.
Well, so far so good. We'll see after today, but yeah.
Yes.
But these are the
Well,
things. It's
both
like the networking. People, I've also met someone that I've never met this booth, this company before, this person before. They were complaining to me that they had some trouble trying to get a hold of someone for a booth at a exhibition, and I happened to know the organizers, and I was able to say, well, let me bring them by. And I didn't have a relationship with this person. I mean, eventually am I trying to gain their business? Certainly, but it's more about I'd like to build a relationship with this person. I'd also like to help the exhibit group. I know that, you know, this organization, and they're trying to, you know, get their booth space sold. So I made the connection, and that was all I cared about at that moment. And this was helpful to that person that I met. So the point is, you just don't want to write anyone off. Introductions and networking. We've had clients that we've introduced to other people that I've met. Like, I think you two should be talking, and all of a sudden that blows up into a nice big partnership. So again, it's networking is very, very important too. So just don't write anyone off. I mean, certainly be conscious of your time, but
it's a key part of marketing, isn't it? What you've done over your career is really bringing people together who should be talking, introducing people. That's a great part of it. And we had a question about time. Time is always you get very limited time always at trade shows. I've often thought that engagement on booths is sort of the beginning of a conversation if you don't know those people or that company already. I think Sunny comes up with a great comment about how also about taking the time to find out what people's time allowance is, so that you don't sort of bombard them with stuff that you could follow up with afterwards. I think that was a very good point.
It's a very important point, especially when you're dealing with the press. And I was going to say, you also want to make sure you have a press engagement plan, whether you have an agency or not. I mean, typically, if you have an agency, they should be helping you with that plan and how to engage. But if you don't, that is one of the first things we tell a client is, when you're meeting with an editor, you ask them how much time they have. What do they want to know? Because they're not going to want or have the time for a full-on demo. There are some that actually will, and they'll tell you that. So if you don't ask that question, you just launch in, you're potentially wasting time, and they're not going to retain what you would like them to retain.
And talking of time has just about defeated us here. Now, there's a couple of other very quick things. You had brought up the people who just scan you because you're on the booth, get numbers. And this kind of ties into a conversation about leads. And I don't want to spend too long on that, if you'll forgive me, because next week's Marketing Kitchen, everybody, do you see what we've done there? We segued in. Is all about how you manage leads, these fantastic sales leads, hopefully, that you get at trade shows and how you can get the most out of those. So we'll be coming back to that next week, March the 21st, I believe, Marketing Kitchen. But there was a very important sort of last point you made, really, about a kind of team briefing, which of course should start your trade show journey as a team, but also there's sort of a debrief session at the end of that. Any sort of top tips or things to remember then?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say for 2 seconds on leads, I still am of the belief, and I've always been of the belief, that it's quantity is not as important as quality of leads. And yet you will still find some companies that their executives are looking for quantity. So it's really you have to know what you're being asked to do as far as the ROI for that particular trade show. But I just don't think it's right to just scan people for the sake of scanning anybody.
It looks bad, doesn't it? I just think it looks
right.
It's not a good look.
But I'll let you talk about that next week. But for team briefings, I think it's just an important thing. Sometimes exhibitors forget that. And I think for me, I like the morning debrief because then it gives people time to think about it overnight. It gives people time to kind of come together at the end of the show. You're really exhausted and you'd like a break. But in the morning before the show opens, you have a debrief. You talk about the specific, what went right, what went wrong, what can we work on today. The positive takeaways from the day before is always really helpful for a team to feel more energized. Touching point on schedules, appointments, meetings, what key customers are coming into your booth today. And that little debrief on sales, because it gives sales the ability to say, hey, I had a great experience yesterday, or, it doesn't seem to be that I'm getting as many clients or whatever, so it's just a good touch point every morning to do with your team, the full team on the booth.
That's brilliant, Susan. It's all about organization, planning, communication, and being organized, and yes, just keeping in touch with each other each day. So this has been fantastic. I'm sorry it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour through, but what we're going to do next, folks, is we're going to end this recording soon, and anybody who has any further questions for Susan, please stick around. But Susan can be easily reached via LinkedIn. I think I'm okay in saying that, Susan.
Yeah, sure.
If anybody has any follow-ups, who perhaps sees the recording of this after this event. But all that remains for me to say is thank you, Susan, so much for sharing your wisdom and your top tips with us. Thanks very much to the live team as always. Ashley, thank you very much. Julia, thank you. And join us next week. Step into the Marketing Kitchen to talk all about leads and how to get the most out of them on Thursday, March the 21st. And watch this space, watch our LinkedIn page for more details. Thank you very much.
Thank you.